We are back with Mr. EWayne McDonald. Good evening, EWayne, and welcome to CWS as it is.
Thanks for having me again.
EWayne, we're here to talk. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are.
That's always a loaded question. I'm the artistic director of the Caribbean Cultural Theatre. We're a Brooklyn-based multi-arts organization. And we do work in four broad areas: the folk traditions, presentation of folk traditions, theatre, as the name suggests. Our most recent production was of Derek Walcott's pantomime. We do film presentations, primarily retrospectives and series. And our literary platform is called Poets and Passion. We are presently in the 9th season of that. And that literally is our literary season is one of the things that we are crowing about right now, because we have over the course of the 9 seasons, we have featured in excess of 100 published writers. And this coming weekend, we are culminating the 9th year, ending 9, going into 10, with a one-day festival at Medgar College. And that will have 35 writers. 35 writers from 15 different countries. So that's in a nutshell what have been keeping me busy here. And for the past 3 years, we, the Caribbean Cultural Theatre, have been privileged enough to be the artists in residence at Medgar College, the Caribbean Research Center there. So they have provided us with a home, and one of the things we're pleased about partnering with them is the presentation of Word, a Caribbean Book Fest. This Saturday, I keep saying Sunday. This Saturday, June 6th, we start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're celebrating Caribbean writers, definitely, but we are also mindful that this process of reading, of exploring Caribbean stories, of exploring Caribbean literature, is a lifelong experience, and we have to start somewhere, and ideally we need to start with the youngest ones. And the Research Center is partnering with us to present the very first panel for that afternoon, which is looking at the whole question of diverse books, creating diverse books. Who creates these books? Who are the writers?
Why is that so important?
Well, if everybody else tells you your story, it is always going to come from their perspective.
Right.
One of the things that came up last year as a talking point in the established circles of literature in this country was that almost all the major literary festivals had no one of color. And one of the things they were saying is that they could not find writers of color to participate in their panels and workshops. That's laughable. And I was saying, you could come in our direction, we could point you to at least 100 of them. But it underscores that if you are not the teller of your own narrative, it will be fashioned in someone else's image. And more so for individuals who are the most vulnerable with regard to the fabrication of an image, or young people. So we're having 4 practitioners under the auspices of the Caribbean Research Center and the School for Liberal Arts at Medgar College. We're having 4 practitioners who will be speaking about this from throughout the region. Carol Mitchell from St. Kitts, who is a publisher. Daniel Ortega from Cuba, who is a writer. Kelly Magnus from Jamaica, who is the chairman of the Jamaica Book Publishers Association, and a representative from Reading Partnership. I'm not quite sure on her name yet. But we will be starting off the whole session looking at who creates this concept of diverse books, because many of the books that we are getting in our image are not necessarily written by persons of color, which is something that I find fascinating as well. But it's being proactive, of owning the culture, of owning the story, of owning the narrative, and finding ways of disseminating this tremendously rich story that we have to share. And all too frequently, we are the only ones telling it to ourselves. So we need to widen that circle. We need to widen it with presence in academia, but we certainly also need to widen it to families. Because it's one thing during the formal learning period of a school day to say that the kids should have books in schools. But parents, caregivers, need to be part of this conversation as well, of how do we make sure that the stories that are being told and the manner in which they are being told reflect some of the more positive images within our community. And there's a lot of that, and unfortunately we are not always being told of them. So we kick off with that.
Let's talk a little bit more about Word. Give us a little more insight into this concept. How did it come about? Why now? Why now? And what is really pushing it?
Well, Word, you probably have to start back to go forward.
Yeah, man.
It's June. Tomorrow is the first day of June.
Yes.
And it's in North America for the past, I think, 9 years. We have been observing it as Caribbean American Heritage Month. And we thought it was a fitting occasion to do a sort of one-off culminating event for our literary program, to see how many writers we could get into one space. And especially because we don't do as many sessions throughout the year towards younger readers, to find that venue that would afford us an opportunity to be able to present books and writers who are writing towards younger readers. So approximately 3 years ago, we decided that, okay, to end the Poets and Passion series, we would use this Caribbean Heritage Month focus to bring attention to an art form that many of us in the Caribbean are painfully blissful to. We have had tremendously good writers, and one of the things that we are pleased about this year's Word Fest is that we're, in addition to as many of the 100 writers that we have programmed over the past 9 seasons that will be coming in to be part of it, we are also celebrating the fact that other people have been celebrating our writers. So we have Tracy Baptiste, Trinidadian national writer of The Jumbie, who have been writing children's books for almost 10 years now. Her most recent book, The Jumbie, was a library selection, the 2015 library selection. And that is more than just putting the book on the shelf. That is a committee of librarians who have anointed particular publications targeting age groups from toddler all the way up to young adult. Cheryl Boyce Taylor, poet, also from Trinidad and Tobago. She was recently awarded Poets and Writers, Barnes and Noble's Writer for Writer Award. And it's a big thing. It was a way, way big thing. And she will be joining us as a poet. And Marlon James, a novelist from Jamaica, whose book been making the rounds, A Brief History of 7 Killings, which is a fictionalized version of the attempted assassination of Bob Marley in the 1970s. That book has literally been on everybody's top 10, top 100 for 2014. Most recently, he was the winner of the Bocas Prize out of Trinidad for fiction, and was a finalist in the United States National Book Critics Award for that book. So even if we don't know that we have good people writing, other people have been recognizing it. So we're inviting as many of us to celebrate their accomplishment, but also to invest in making sure that our writers know that we are behind them.
For young writers, or upcoming writers who are concerned, Caribbean writers, that look, we need to have a wider audience, and some believe that if they focus on Caribbean tales or Caribbean sceneries and stories and so on, that is limited. What do you say to that? Limited in terms of audience, in terms of Yes, in terms of buy-in, in terms of audience, what do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I think that the question has to be parsed out some. If what you're asking is if they are going to be focusing exclusively on a Caribbean clientele for the purchase of the final product, then that might indeed be somewhat limited. But Agatha Christie have been writing about the Caribbean. Ian Fleming has been writing about the Caribbean. Many of the stories are set there, and one would not necessarily consider them those stories limiting or limited. The Caribbean story is universal. Our stories are we still have fights and love and wars and conflict and passion as everybody else in every other part of the region. What we clearly need to do is to own those stories and to be the best ambassadors of them. Straight up tales. I'm telling you a story about a man and a woman and their journey through life. And from that perspective, they're not significantly different than anybody else's. The other part of that is that setting a story in a particular place, as in the case of Miss Christie and Mr. Fleming, setting their stories there don't necessarily mean that they can effectively speak with a voice from that space. And the whole question of diversity has to start with yourself, that I have a legitimate story to tell, and I am part of this wider narrative called human race.
So setting is not necessarily limiting.
No, because New York is a Caribbean place.
Yes.
You know, Brooklyn is a Caribbean place. Walk up and down Church Avenue, walk up and down any part of the Bronx and White Plains Road. You are in the Caribbean. Those are Caribbean lives. So even the individual who may be concerned with regard to a potential market
Yes.
is also somewhat limited in the view if what they're talking about is just this physical circum-Caribbean, with or without the linguistic hurdles that may be there. There's always the diaspora, and it is a challenging industry to be in. Let us not fool ourselves where that's concerned. And to that end, another roundtable at Word will have 3 writers who will be sharing their first book experience. Elsie Auguste from Haiti, Annette Ventris Leach from Panama, and Naomi Jackson from Antigua and Barbuda. I think she's born here actually. But what they'll be doing is looking at their own experiences as published with a small press, self-published, and published with a major press, respectively. And many of the things they wish they knew before they started the process. So we're also investing in our writers, in our artistic community, to make sure each one teaches one, because many times the information is literally sitting over there, and everybody just keep walking around it, or worse. The information is over there, but we will seek it out from others because we value the opinion of other communities than from among ourselves.
Why do you do this?
I mean, apart from I have no life. That's a very loaded question because that's gonna be like my mother asking me why I don't become a doctor. What drives you? I have no children, and therefore the children's book thing. I have nephews and nieces, and say, okay, cool, let me get books for them. I keep telling writers that I don't even write. I can barely even read. So it's not a personal passion in that I have to get my book out, sort of a thing. Where the passion is that it's part of my life. It's an upsetting thing. I am probably one of the more fortunate persons coming from the Caribbean of realizing that one, the Caribbean is far wider than just the rock or piece of property you were born on. Having the privilege of literally living on the University of the West Indies campus in Jamaica for most of my life. So that ongoing interaction with a region of ideas, of people who look and sound different, but look and sound very much like you, and wanting to explore that. But also when you come to a place like New York, realizing that there is so much more to us that others will stop ask you, where in Jamaica is Trinidad? And if you actually have roof on your house sort of a thing, and you know, where's the best beach? And he's like, okay, there's more to us. And I think that is where the passion lies, in trying to, at both ends meaning the outsider, but also the insiders, those who we assume already know that there's indeed more to us. There's a tremendous richness to our story, that the tapestry that we have created, some of it tremendously painful, but a lot is there to celebrate, and trying to find as much of it to celebrate as we can.
Saturday. How does one participate? Well, before that question, how did you find the participants for the event on Saturday, the different writers and so on?
Well, as having bumped into 100 of them over the course of the years, it's getting easier to identify a range of writers, poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction, than it was, say, 8 years ago. So many of them, when we sent out the call earlier in the year to just find out who would be interested, we were surprised that so many people would have been able to make it. So we started off with that. So of the 36 writers, approximately 25 of them are old people. People we have had in previous seasons. But we certainly created space for newer writers. Okay. And in many ways we have been blessed in just in terms of developing the network, because most writers have come to us through recommendation. And we, not to brag, but we kind of have a high reputation to keep, because our very first session started off with Linton Kwesi Johnson out of England, and Kamau Brathwaite, literally one of the gods of Caribbean literature, born out of Barbados. So that was where we started, and I'm tremendously pleased to say that we have not fallen very far from that sort of a cadre of writer.
Your ninth year.
Into the 9th year, and again, if we do the 9th, we might as well do the 10th. So we'll see what the 10th holds. But I think what those two certainly pointed towards, and we have been able to do it since, is that there is a tremendous wealth of talent. A lot of it we are not even aware of, and I think that is one of the reasons why this has been a rather fascinating journey. One, in terms of just, I wouldn't necessarily say exposing the talent, but at least bringing attention to it. Because many of these guys, from Linton Kwesi all the way down to through a Kamau Brathwaite and a Derek Walcott, to the award-winning writers we have this year. Others have been recognizing them. Others have been celebrating their work. Okay. The thing that you constantly find painfully amusing is that also frequently when we bring somebody in, or we are able to hook up with a larger conversation of writers coming in, that when we point this out to Caribbean nationals that so and so and so is coming, you have this overly blank stare, like, okay, cool, it's not even who is this, is that he, is that she, is that it, and it's like, yeah, he is so and so, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, and in large measure, it's not always their fault, because we have had a rather tortured, throughout the Caribbean region, tortured relationship with regard to literature and letters and writing. At one end, many of us know of books and literature as something as a tool of punishment.
True.
You must go in your room and read your book.
Very true.
Type thing. So that's one. But also, certainly for earlier generations, and it's getting better, but we're not totally there, is that many times the stories that are being told in these books, irrespective of the form, are about somebody else's life. So the average Caribbean child growing up in 90-degree weather with zinc roof, if not thatch roof on their house, can explain to you exactly what snow is. and what a chimney is, and probably can describe to you in intricate detail what a cucumber salad is, a cucumber sandwich is. But can't tell you about doubles. There's no book to tell them about doubles. No book to tell them about ginger beer and marby. And therefore, it speaks to the validation of your existence. And I think this is primarily where the whole thing of diverse books come. It is not so much so that a child would not be able to read any book in the lingua franca of where they're being reared. It is that it does not validate them as a person. I'm looking back and I'm struggling hard to remember the first time, and I hope it's not when I got to high school, but the first time I saw a black person in a literature book in school. There was an elementary reader, Mr. Joe, that the characters were black. But all the fairy tales were white. Snow White. There was no Anansi story that was popularly being thrown around as a book. And if you got one, you probably were the fortunate child. Increasingly, that's the norm, that you can pick up such title off the shelf and share it with a child. But for a very long time, and we are not yet at the perfect stage yet, but for a very long time, we were not in books. And if we were supposed to be, apparently, the oncoming hurricane. Not hurricane, let me not alarm people. The thunderstorm that's supposed to be in the region. But the whole thing of validating your existence, because for many of us, the only time that persons of color, certainly from the African descended Caribbean, your depiction is almost always a slave.
True.
That is how you find your way in a book, that you somehow the slave thing, and black people slave, and you're slave, and all these rather interesting depictions of African life. That's the only way you found yourself in a book. And changing that paradigm, or celebrating other aspects of that narrative, is important. It's tremendously important if we are to walk with your head high, without bragging. That there is enough behind you to hold you straight, that you don't have to grasp for empty things to prop you up.
What are 3 things you're hoping this event on Saturday, Word, what are your 3 things you're hoping that people come away with?
Well, we're there from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if
8 p.m.?
Yes, it's a whole. Listen, I think you don't understand. It's enough writer we have. We're only touching 36 of them, and saying only is going to still blow many people's minds. That where we find 36 writers from, because they only know 1 or they know 2.
Yes.
So if nothing else, the first thing that you just did is what we're hoping to accomplish. That people begin to realize that we have people out there that have been plowing the literary field for a very long time, and they need to reap the benefit of that. They are working out there and they're doing tremendously good job. And we need to be the last ones to tell you that so-and-so got an award, or so-and-so's book is being translated to the screen. It should be as second nature as we know, as what many of the musicians are doing. So just the awareness, just the actual awareness that they exist, and they exist not just in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. The second thing would love, could be in all the meeting rooms for the entire 8-hour span. We work out that we have approximately 2,000 seats. So they're running 1-hour cycles, but it's 2,000 seats, and you add them up as multiplier. So the second thing we sincerely hope is that, especially for the young readers platforms, that people will stop blaming young people for not reading or not going out to a particular function, and literally take them with them. We need, because many of these functions, the folk events, the artistic events, we constantly decry how the age group tends to be tremendously grayer than we would like. We love older persons there, but we need to guide young people into these spaces. Many of them will not come on their own. It's going to be boring. It's not their thing. They prefer the Nintendo until they are exposed to it.
Yeah.
And we therefore would very much love, especially for we have, I think, 15 writers who write towards young readers. Some of them exclusively, some of them with other genre. So as many seats as we have available, if we can get young people in, baby on breast all the way up to people who can decide their own destiny.
What kind of cost we talking
You know,
about?
oh, it's $10. $10 for adults, and all children under 15, they come in free.
Coming free.
But we just so awareness and young people. The third thing I would very much love people to come away with is the depth of work that's out there. You know, I mean, it's powerful work. And don't make other people tell us it's good. You know, and they're all over. They're all over because many of these writers are actually in the New York metropolitan area. Some of them are indeed coming from out of town. We have had good friends, in addition to the Caribbean Research Center and the Department of Liberal Studies at Medgar Evers College. We have had poets and writers and the Brooklyn Arts, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, helping us to make sure some of these people come through the door and share their talent. But we certainly need the community to be aware of we're good.
How does one get a ticket?
Well, because you can get them online.
What is it? The address.
Through Network for Good. Just type in Caribbean Cultural Theatre. Or certainly at the event. It's a $10 ticket, and many people have told us because they're kind of hard to buy a $10 ticket and work the fee in, as opposed to just purchasing it there. So we're willing to have them purchase it there.
Okay.
So yes, you can do the walk.
But if they want to learn more about this, they go to Network.
Network for Good. Yes, we are all being told to evacuate. Yeah, Network for Good. And type in the Caribbean Cultural Theatre, and we're also on Facebook as Caribbean Cultural Theatre, and the platform Poets for Passion. Poets and Passion, a Caribbean literary line.
Is there any particular thing you want before we close? You want to say to the audience?
Oh, the best way to celebrate Caribbean Heritage Month is to celebrate Caribbean Heritage every day of the year. And just pass through. There are 30 wordsmiths there to wow their mind,
including you, right?
Well, no. See, I and so I keep telling these writers, I don't write. I don't. There are at least 2 teachers I can distinctly remember who would be very shocked that I have anything to do with this thing. Very, very shocked. And I know they're far older now, so I don't necessarily want to give them a heart attack. But there are at least 2 teachers that would be tremendously shocked that I have anything to do with that book. So much so that we're not inviting them. We're definitely not inviting them. But everybody else. It's 365 days of a Caribbean reality.
Yes.
And we're using 30 of them to create focus. And on the 6th of June at Medgar Evers College, the focus is on Caribbean literature. And the value and tremendous wealth we have there.
Well, thank you. I hope you're able to get the message out today, and what this event Word is all about. It's Word what?
Word, a Caribbean Book Fest. Yes.
Caribbean Book Fest.
Yeah, we call it Fest because we don't have enough money to call it festival yet. But
from 1 to 8.
Yes, one, and we're still having fire. Yeah, 1 to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
That's why you have too many phones. There's the second one going off now. 1 to 8 p.m. at Medgar Evers College. In the heart of literally the largest Caribbean city in outside of the Caribbean. Brooklyn, New York.
All right. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for having me.